Hi, my name is Debbie, and I am a PhD candidate at the University of Melbourne. Together with my supervisors, Dr. Stephanie Levo and Professor Catherine Williams, I investigate the impacts of digital or next generation citizen science. And as part of the partnership, I am in Theme E, Community Participation in Waterway Management. I want to begin by acknowledging traditional custodians on the lands and waters where I work, the Wurundjeri people, as well as other First Nations in Australia and other parts of the world. I pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. In the context of biodiversity laws and climate change, volunteers are very important for environmental monitoring and for conservation. Public participation in environmental research is increasingly using digital technologies for communication, for data capture, and for data analysis. Similarly, Melbourne Water is increasing community engagement in waterways and the usage of digital technologies, and the Frog Census app is one of the examples. Now, given that we are shifting from face-to-face to digital ways of communicating with volunteers and engaging them, there's little information about both the benefits and risks of digital technologies in citizen science. What do we know? We know that for volunteers, nature connections, social connections, and knowledge production are important. With the ongoing changes in digital societies, these three areas are changing as well. Some of the risks that we might face with digital technologies in citizen science is that the social and nature disconnection that might come with new technologies, the risk of framing participation as individual. Many apps imagine a user that is an individual, and we might end up ignoring social aspects of the activity that are very important. And in terms of the production of knowledge, if we blindly trust technologies to be inclusive, this is a risk as well. So my research objectives are three. First, I want to identify how digital tools shape the experiences. So what people experience and what they do when they go environmental monitoring. Then I want to see how nature connections and social connections interplay with the production of knowledge to paint a fuller picture of digital citizen science. And I also want to see how projects are employing technologies and in doing so, if they are supporting or not the experiences of their volunteers. This could benefit Melbourne Water and partners in multiple ways. It could inform strategies for recruitment, participation, training, and retention of volunteers. It could also inform design of citizen science programs and the technological interfaces. This better understanding and the recommendations that will follow will have an impact not only in a better experience for volunteers, but then that in turn will lead to high value data from Melbourne Water, both in quantity and quality of data. How do I plan to do this? I'm going to use a case study approach with an intensive focus on two cases, the Frog Census, and most likely a bird monitoring program. The participants are all going to be 18 years of age, and they will have a diversity in years of engagement and degrees of engagement, as well as the roles that they have. I will use multiple qualitative methods, from interviews to participant observation online and offline, autoethnography and content analysis. In this presentation, however, I will focus on the initial findings that are coming from interviews, especially interviews with volunteers. I've conducted so far 20 interviews, and I'm still doing interviews all of this year. I have organized some of these initial insights in these three areas that are important for volunteers. When they are monitoring, volunteers feel that they are protecting the habitat and the frogs. They feel joy because of being in the wild. Hearing the frogs as well gives them a sense of being in the wild. They're amazed at frogs, they're amazed at their resilience, and they also feel like they're visiting the frog's place. So when we introduce digital technologies for monitoring, it might be different if we, for example, make them take a picture or audio record. A volunteer said that when he was trying to take pictures, he felt that he was disrupting the habitat a bit more because he wanted to get closer, and then that created noise, and then the frogs stopped calling, and that messed up with their cycles. So there is an awareness that the audio recording is less disruptive, and some of them also appreciate that they have to be in silence to record. What are the consequences of this for social interactions? Well, a volunteer explained that she goes bird watching in company because other people help her see more birds, but she goes frog monitoring alone. She said, with frogs, you really need to have yourself, the recorder, and silence, except for the frogs. But social interactions are important, even if the monitoring moment, the data capture, is individual. For another volunteer, he expressed that it was very rewarding to share what he had found with the friends of group, that it gave him a sense of achievement, but also it gave him an opportunity to learn from others that had more experience. So in sum, social connections are important. They're important for the initiation of frog monitoring and to stay in the activity. Participants really seem to value the face-to-face interaction with Melbourne Water staff, the trainings and all the other conversations that happen and potential collaborations. And the Facebook group is generating engagement, and some volunteers that I interview are part of the Facebook group, but others find Facebook problematic because of privacy issues. So this is an aspect that I will continue exploring. Now, going to knowledge production, multiple volunteers are using multiple apps and platforms. iNaturalist, the Frog ID, the CoastNet, Bird Data. They're very knowledgeable about monitoring practices, but also the different programs and the different technologies. This has a connection with the social aspect, because the participation in one citizen science project might lead them to another one. So maybe they are bird monitoring and they find out about frog monitoring and they start with that. Participants agree that it is easy to monitor frogs with the app and that the digital technologies make it easier. But they also get super annoyed and frustrated when there are bugs in the app, when there are digital technologies that are missing, because they compare programs with each other. So they are able to tell, this could have this other thing. There is another way in which social interactions are important. For one of the volunteers, for example, he was using the Frog ID more, but he switched to the Frog Census because of a relationship between the friends of group and the Frog Census, and Melbourne Water more in general. And so he says, Melbourne Water is a key stakeholder of the creek. Supporting Melbourne Water and the Frog Census is important for having future discussions about the creek. So this is very relevant. Other things are related to nature connections and knowledge production too. Volunteers are using or imagining in the future that they will use the data that they collected in the app for advocacy and for habitat protection. So, for example, they imagine that if there's a development that might damage the creek, they might be able to say, oh, there's an endangered species here. We need to protect these frogs. And finally, there's more work to do in terms of clarifying the objectives, because even if they are able to name some objectives of the frog census, they hesitate a lot in this question. So these are just some initial insights. I will continue doing fieldwork for the frog census and the second case study. I will be coding and analyzing the data in the rest of the year and all of 2021, as well as writing chapters and papers to be published. But also I want to do engagement videos with my research findings that will be shared with volunteers and citizen science practitioners. I want to take a moment to acknowledge, first of all, my supervisor, Stephanie Laveau. With her support, I'm able to do a lot more and a lot better. And I also want to acknowledge the Melbourne Water team. Tiana, Trish, James, Richard, and Yvonne have been tremendous help to think about these issues and to connect with the volunteers. And especially I want to acknowledge the contribution of Riz and Boba. This is my contact information, my email and my Twitter account, Participatory SC. Please get in touch if you want to know more about my project. Thank you very much for listening. Talk to you soon.